Good afternoon. We'll bring this meeting of Environmental Stewardship Advisory Committee to order. Thank you everyone for coming. And yes, I will ask for any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Is any of those to declare? Seeing none, we will move on to the approval of the agenda. Moved by Councillor McHugh, seconded by Mr. Brown. Okay, all in favor of that? Okay, it's carried. Okay, so we have the approval of the May 16, 2023 minutes of the Environmental Stewardship Advisory Committee. Moved by Councillor McHugh. We have a seconder, also Mr. Brown. All in favor? If there's any discussion, no, okay. All right, so we will have public input at this point, which, yes, we have the letter from Robert Ormston. I'm sure that committee members have availed themselves to that information. I guess, should I get a mover and a seconder to receive that public input, or not necessary? Okay, I will open up the floor for comment or discussion. Go ahead, Ms. Miller.
Yes, I was actually very impressed with this. Obviously, a person that has some experience behind them in terms of biodiversity monitoring or citizen science. And it does beg some interesting questions. And one is an ongoing question at many levels of municipal and upwards of just what constitutes due diligence in terms of survey prior efforts are done in terms of commercial structures, building, that sort of thing, and this sort of reiterates it too. And it's the kind of thing that can fall easily under a citizen science effort. And I just want to draw attention to that because, for instance, in Robbins Plantain, that's something that could have easily been spotted by someone that has some wherewithal. And this leads up to some of the things that eventually will come into new business today about biodiversity awareness. So I thought it was a very good letter, and I think there are important points to be taken in.
Thank you. Well, go ahead.
Yes, I'd just like to kind of add to what Jacqueline was just saying. There are designated wetlands, of course, as we all know, and there's also a whole other range of biodiverse areas that are thought to be designated wetlands, but have not been legally identified as wetlands. And that brings a whole list of issues when it comes time to develop and to try and balance between biodiversity and the need to build more houses, to make it short. I was in that area. First off, I had to ask where Hannah Park was, because it wasn't making sense that there was an industrial park over there. But I used to hike over there quite a bit, and I remember hiking through a few years ago, and here are these bulldozers working away in this low, wet area and draining it away. And I wondered at the time, surely there's not a housing development going there because it would probably sink into the mud. Apparently there's now an industrial park going there. So I do think there's maybe a need for more diligence in that area. And when people are pointing out to us things like plant species that only exist in small numbers and turtles certainly that everyone recognizes as being an issue, I think it's kind of incumbent upon us to respond to it in some way and perhaps at least use it as a lessons learned before we take on projects such as that and approve projects such as that.
Thank you, Mr. Henning. I should note that Director Angelo sends his regrets and isn't with us today. I don't want to put Mr. Tracy on the spot too much, but would you happen to be aware if the city does currently use the wildlife fencing at all, or if we if development companies, if that's often being utilized at recommendation by Trent Conservation or any of the conservation authorities.
Through your chair, Mr. Chair, I'm not specific on whether it's wildlife fencing. There is the silt fencing that's pretty standard on most projects. Again, depending on the studies that were done at the time prior to any construction, we work with the Ministry of Environment, the species at risk, and the conservation authorities to implement mitigating measures according to the species that are found and the requirements that they detail.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Yes, sitting on the Planning Advisory Committee, I can definitely speak to the great diligence that the conservation authorities and, as you mentioned, the Ministry of the Environment also. So that is definitely good to know. Yeah, very good feedback from Mr. Ormston. Is there any more discussion on his input? Go ahead, Ms. Miller.
Just a quick question. Is that information accessible to the public? Survey, biodiversity, assessment results, and so forth?
Through you, Mr. Chair, any of the larger projects that do an environmental assessment, the assessment report and all studies are available to the public. A lot of times they are posted on our website as well.
Thank you.
Yes, and I'm sure Director Angelo, if we were to follow up, or possibly through Director Jardin, could get access to those reports for the specific development jutting up to Hannah Park there. So, all right. Well, if there isn't any more discussion on that public input, I suppose we shall. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Henry.
Yes. Do we have any action on this particular letter? Will we be responding to Mr. Ormston, or perhaps even with a suggestion as to where you can find the information on the environmental assessment that was done prior?
I can absolutely follow up with Director Angelo and forward that information.
Because this person's obviously put a good deal of thought and research himself into it, and it's extremely well written. And I think he deserves probably some response from us, at least acknowledging it and saying, thanks very much. Here's where you can find it, more information, and we'd be pleased to hear something back from you once you've done your homework. Sorry, wrong word. Your research.
I think that's a very good suggestion. So would you like to move that to have staff follow up with correspondence about the specific Hannah Park development that he's referencing?
I really hate loading more work on you folks, because I know we already have enough to do, but yeah, I would like to move that we ask staff to prepare a response to Mr. Ormston's letter outlining basically the gist of what was said here tonight and this afternoon, and encouraging him to, or at least giving him some information as to where he can get the results of the environmental survey and so on, should he wish. Is that a decent motion?
I think that we can do that. Yeah, just following up with the correspondence with the relevant environmental assessments or reports, whatever the city has access to.
Because the person is obviously knowledgeable and keen, and we don't want to turn him away and say, very nice, pat on the head, or say nothing to him, and he's not going to be first in line to come and help us out with anything else again. So I think it would be a decent motion. So I would like to so move.
Sure. Can I get a seconder for that? Okay, Mrs. Miller. Okay, all in favor? Okay, that'll be carried. All right, so we will move on to Mr. Don Wilford of the Bay of Quinte Green Party to provide a climate change planning presentation called The Great Simplification.
So, hello, committee members. I was surprised to see the Great Simplification. That's Nate Hagen's on the agenda. He's a bit advanced, but his work is great. So I sent a deputation, I previously gave to Prince Edward County's Environmental Advisory Committee. It's a bit dated, so let me go off script to begin with at least. So people think we're getting on top of climate change. We're not. It's accelerating. More dangerously, it's accelerating exponentially. So let me ask you if you have a favorite exponential story. Mine is a story of a peasant in a faraway, long ago Eastern Empire. The emperor asked him thanked him for his service and told him he could request a gift. It's a challenge, of course. Asking for too much might be dangerous. Asking for too little might lose the emperor's respect. So he sees a chessboard, and you know what he asks for. You've heard the story before. He asks for just 1 grain of rice on the first square, 2 on the second, 4 on the third, and so on. It seems modest, doesn't it? But 2 raised to the power of 64 is a very big number. The total weight in the final square would be 535 billion tons, equivalent to 232 of today's annual cereal harvests. And the rice column, if it was 1 inch square, would be a column 7,222 solar distances high, or 1.1 light years. So mathematicians say the exponential function blows up. Its characteristic is that it repeatedly doubles. Imagine sitting on the beach and seeing a 6-inch wave roll in. Imagine the next one is a foot, and then 2 and 4 and 8. So when would you decide to run? If you left it to 8 feet, the next 2 would be 16 and 32. You'd be overwhelmed before you got to your car. And the next few would deluge your hotel, the town, and the coastline. The doubling time for today's polycrisis is around 35 years, and I believe we're in the final one. I say the polycrisis because it's not just climate change. Biodiversity is halving every 25 years. Soon there will be few insects left, or the birds that feed on them. Fish are dying, the oceans are warming, and water contains less oxygen, so fish can't breathe, so have to move to colder waters. Oceans are full of plastics, increasing exponentially, of course, and so are we. All living things are full of microplastics and chemicals. Recently, James Hansen, a NASA scientist who first warned the US Senate in 1988, stated that the Earth's heating will double in the next 25 years, and we'll be bumping up against 2 degrees climate catastrophe territory. So exponential growth is natural. It's what trees do, but in nature, trees mature and they stop, and so do we. But our imaginations are boundless, so we build an economy that never stops. 2% economic growth means a doubling time of 35 years. It's no coincidence. It's the same number as for the polycrisis. It means we will cut down twice as many trees, extract twice as many minerals, pump twice as much oil and gas, and emit twice as much greenhouse gas in the next 35 years. Or we'll try to. For all these, we will demand more in the next 35 years than the sum total of everything that we've used in all of previous human history. So it's sheer madness to talk about sustainability in the midst of exponential growth. And it's easy to ignore the warning signs. Vast inequality, unaffordable housing, education, medical care, even food is becoming unaffordable for many. We wonder about mental health problems, deaths of despair, family doctors being overwhelmed. We talk of borders, wars, and refugees, of a troubled world of political polarization and extremism. Then we put it all aside and go back to business at hand because it's what we know how to do. So I joined the Green Party of Ontario after my first grandchild was born. I imagine him growing up and asking me what I'd done. I don't feel I've done much, and I'm deeply concerned for him and his friends and our grandchildren and children. The Green Party talks about the need for caring for each other, for the planet, for long-term outcomes instead of short-term financial profits. Green technical solutions are important, but they cannot alone change our paradigm and avert our crisis. The solution cannot be to continue growing consumption, just doing it differently. If we grow anything at all, it needs to be our caring work. It's no more than the indigenous wisdom we profess to respect at the opening of our meetings, not just for our grandchildren's generation, but for 7 generations into the future. So, what can I offer you? I stumbled on an academic paper on climate change planning by Dave Guyadine and Dan Henstra of Guelph and Waterloo universities. Often, when one does a literature search, one finds things that are interesting but not comparable. Maybe a different place, time, or situation, but Guyadine and Henstra's paper is spot on. 1, it's peer-reviewed. 2, hot off the press, published in January of this year. And 3, it reviews climate change planning for all 108 small rural Ontario municipalities, all of Quinte West's peers. It notes the Partners for Climate Protection program as a key driver, and it provides a timely assessment of Ontario's progress. What is surprising is both the lack of progress and its diversity. The paper identifies peer municipalities that are ahead: King, Woodstock, Durham, Orangeville, and 7, and the majority, including Quinte West, that have a lot to learn from them. Guyadine and Henstra's methodology is really very straightforward. First, use an established evaluation framework that's been widely used for other planning, for master transportation plans, municipal and community official plans, hazard mitigation plans, and strategic plans. Second, use 8 consistent evaluation criteria, such as: is planning fact-based? Are there specific goals and objectives? Is there a commitment to implement and monitor the plan? And will the public be involved? Finally, ask whether planning will answer reasonable questions, such as: will it address things that are specific to our community? Will it include a policy on green building and infrastructure, a policy on renewable energy, and one on supporting local farmers? Will it prioritize actions and clearly identify responsibilities? Guyadine and Henstra conclude that municipal climate change planning in Ontario is in its infancy. Fact-based was among the lowest scoring characteristic. Many plans did not include comprehensive goals, policies were narrow, and did not include direction on monitoring or who was responsible. And there was little mainstreaming of climate change planning into regular council business, something I saw very clearly when I sat through Prince Edward County's budget planning meetings last year. Climate change was barely mentioned. Overall, Quinte West's score was 24%. I say this not to blame anyone. We, like many others, have simply not been paying attention. So let me wrap up by offering 5 suggestions I hope you may positively consider. If you've not done so, please read Guyadine and Henstra's paper, discuss it, study it, and make it a foundation for your journey, and I've provided you with 2 copies. Invite Dave and Dan to speak to you, at least by Zoom. I've spoken to Dave, and I know he's more than willing. Think bigger, faster, and with more impact. We just don't have time for the kind of half measures most municipalities are contemplating. And be more publicly visible. The first rule of communication is to communicate, and it's never too early to involve the public. Finally, and specifically, make a firm plan to visit your leading peers and report back. Why not within 3 months? Make a questionnaire, take it on the road. You'll find your peers will be pleased to answer specific questions and thrilled to tell you about what they have done. If staff's too busy, then involve committee members and set up working groups. Be bold. Advertise the outcome as a solid first step with the public release of a report on what has been achieved. As well as being one of the most knowledgeable people in Canada in climate change planning, Dave is eminently approachable. I asked him whether my deputation cut muster, and he said it was great. I asked him about my final recommendation to meet with peers. Sure, he said, of course, why reinvent the wheel? But then he said it wasn't the first thing he'd do. Don't make the same mistake everyone makes. Retreat into closed offices and work on a template. There's nothing wrong with templates. They serve a purpose. But the first thing to do is to talk to residents. If your farmers are having a hard time with climate change, they'll tell you. It's urgent to begin this dialogue with the people who live here. Committee members, issues like climate change are hard. In their classic planning paper, Ritter and Weber call them wicked problems. Problems that don't have easy solutions, where progress is groping in the dark. But it's important that we take action now if we want our children and grandchildren to have a decent life in a working economy and on a living planet. Finally, I brought you a paper by a heterodox economist I follow called Steve Keen. It's called Loading the Dice Against Pension Funds. Flawed economic thinking on climate has put your pension and the rest of the economy at risk. DICE, by the way, stands for Dynamic Integrated Climate Economy Model. Economists and financial planners have always downplayed the climate crisis. Why? They assume that if the economy is protected from climate change, that the economy is protected from climate change if it has a roof. Seriously. As an example of something that doesn't have a roof and they consider is threatened, farming, but it's only 3% of our economy. So if we lose our food production, it will only be a minor change to GDP. They make an assumption of a quadratic so-called damage function. The damage to the economy increases as a square of climate temperature rise. There's absolutely no justification for this. In fact, it's foolish. They ignore tipping points. 8 have been identified and all have the potential not just to make things worse, but to tip the Earth's climate into a completely new state that may not support the natural ecosystems we have evolved with. So that's what's at stake. It's a big problem. You can't solve climate change in Quinte West, but you can get serious about Guyadine and Henstra's paper and seriously consider climate change planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilford, for the presentation and comments. I would like to open it up to the committee members to ask Mr. Wilford any questions, or if you have any comments on the presentation or anything at all. Does anyone? Councilor McKee?
I'd just like to say he brought us a couple of copies, and to mention, it'd be nice if we got extra copies made and we could read it, and then we could talk more intelligently about it, have a look at it, and see it. That was your intention, right? Bring us here, make us aware of this, and you've given us literature to read and research.
Yes, please. And look, if I can be a little bit cheeky, you know, why haven't your staff provided you with this paper? I mean, imagine an academic in Ontario has studied all of your peer municipalities, has offered a suggestion as to how to do climate change planning, and have you seen a copy of it? And if you haven't, why not? Why does it fall to me, a member of the public, to bring forward something that's been published in the literature of rural, well, you can see the name of the journal that I've given you. It's in Rural Planning, I think. Anyway, yeah, please have a look at it, read it. If you like, I've made a summary of it that I can send to you if you'd like something easy to read. In fact, I will do that.
Thank you. Yes, and it's possible that similar information has been provided to previous iterations of the committee. But I do thank you for bringing this, and I will comment kind of broadly on the presentation briefly. That sorry. Oh yeah. Okay. One moment, Councillor Sharp. I'll get to you. Yeah, I agree completely that humans, one of the big challenges with climate change is that humans, I think that we are as a society pretty good at shall we say, immediate threats. Yeah, to use another analogy or a parabola, the frog in the slow boiling water. If we're facing a Great Depression or a war or a COVID-19 virus, it's very easy to rally society and to make big changes very quickly and be aggressive and focus the entire economy and society toward an end. But what you said about with climate change is fumbling around in the dark, trying to, different people have different targets, whether it's carbon parts per million in the atmosphere or different metrics. And obviously we share the atmosphere. Each country is only playing a small part, and we have to, manage different expectations in the economy and different things. It's endlessly complicated, like you mentioned. So I just wanted to mention that you're exactly right on that and call on Councillor Sharp for comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Wilford, for your presentation. I apologize, I'm not there, I'm zooming in. I just wanted to share a few comments and just looking at the PowerPoint you had sent in advance, right? The great simplification and all the information there. And thank you for that. I think you raised a good point, and I just wanted to share with you, and you may know this, and it just, as I listened, active transportation and trails, strategic plan, transportation plan, official plan needs public input and needs to consider climate change. And we've actually gone through those very recently over the past few years with public input. And one reason that the Environmental Stewardship Committee was formed, and I think that was great, whether we call it a committee or a working group going forward. So we, as a strategic plan process, as you mentioned, it was, came out from the public. And I think that, and that became in our strategic plan a priority. So I just wanted to share that with you, and I agree, the public input, excuse me. I have a question, and it may have been covered in the information you sent in advance. The scoring of the communities, and you mentioned, was it Woodstock and a few others, King Township, Woodstock, so forth. And we as a city only received 24%. Who scored that? I'm just trying to go back to that.
Let me preface my
Who made
answer
that
by
determination?
yeah. Let me preface my answer by saying that the video that was posted, I just sent sort of unofficially for you guys to have a look at it. It wasn't part of the
Right.
my intention to make it part of the.
Oh, okay,
official.
because I did
Okay,
look
so
through it.
so I spoke to Dave Guyadine, and you could too get him on Zoom. He'll very happily talk to you. So what he did was he employed 2 students to look through everything that they could find. He made it clear that he didn't dig any deeper. He feels that information should be in the public domain. So they looked in the public domain, and he had his students evaluate everything that he could find, that they could find from, for example, Quinte West, and score what they found. And only if the scores were the same, each student came to the same answer, did they include the evaluation. If there was a difference, they dug into it more deeply. So that's it. To be honest and fair, it was that level of review. It was 2 students looking at everything they could find, municipality by municipality. But of course, they covered 108 municipalities. So it's thin, but it's comprehensive. So you are being judged against, fairly against your other 107 peers on 8
Thank you.
criteria.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, are there any more questions for Mr. Wilford or comments? Mr. Henning, go ahead.
I would like to say that, first off, we may not rank among the highest communities in the province as far as our response to climate change. There have been some notable efforts made to at least get the public attention focused on it, because honestly, the public in this area could be more focused on improvement in that way as well. I personally ran up against that resistance in various representations I've made. I helped Terry Cassidy, former councillor, raise a motion to declare a climate emergency in our municipality. His thinking and my thinking on that at the time was, first off, if we didn't do something soon, our grandkids didn't really have a future. But also, we realized that it wasn't just a matter of saying, well, let's go green, that we were going to have to start everything we do, or his intent and my thinking at the time was everything we do as a planner should have an element of, okay, what effect is this going to have on our environment, our carbon emissions, and so on. Not to mention our political environment, because along with climate change has been an exponential rise in reactionary politics. I think we're all quite aware of that, particularly in places like Alberta. So I guess, and I was really pleased to see, for example, the formation of this committee. 5 years ago, it would have been unheard of, I think. So it's a small step in the right direction. The conversation gets started with something like this, and I think we need to keep going in that direction. But I look around too, and I also see us still encouraging things like every new home that's built has natural gas connected to it. We know we have to stop using carbon fuels or reduce them. So could we somehow be, encouraging the use of alternates to carbon fuels? Could we be having better transportation to get people downtown so we don't feel obliged to bring our car every time, and all those things? So I think we've started, but I think we still have quite some distance to go.
I mean,
And,
let me say
and
that
the trouble
I've
is, as you say, we don't have much time.
I've enjoyed being here today more than being in front of the Environmental Advisory Committee in Prince Edward County. So, I mean, my initial reaction is you guys are great and trying hard. One of the things Guy-Dean and Henstra suggested was just mainstreaming, which you touched on. Like council, every decision you make, are you thinking about, even thinking about? So it came up in Prince Edward County's budget meeting last year, a ramp to Bloomfield Town Hall. And it was in 3 stages. So they'd followed code, and there were 26 concrete piers. 26 concrete piers to install a ramp for wheelchairs. And, nobody batted an eyelid. You know how much carbon dioxide concrete produces? And anyway, it's just an example of things going through council and getting rubber stamped, and just nobody's. It can be as simple as just thinking about it. Yeah.
Ms. Miller?
Yeah, I really enjoyed your talk and your input, and I think they're all, again, it's I think part and parcel. We're very glad why this advisory committee was formed, and some of us as the public were able to have the opportunity to be invited to participate and contribute. And I want to recircle and refocus on public awareness, and I agree with you. I think that is something that we do have within our arena to be able to go forward and improve upon, not just public awareness, but access to information. These things, for instance, environmental assessments that are done, yes, being available on a mainframe, on a web page is one thing, but many people don't know how to find these things. I stumbled across applying for this committee by reading the Trentonian. And well, it's a very valid paper that gets circulated to every home and farm in this community, and that's actually, how I got certain kinds of information. So I think there's a lot that can be done there, and I'm very excited that I think we do have the resources and the power and the interest to do that going forward. And I do think I'm hoping that you will see some positive improvements in that regard.
Well, your job is difficult, but it's called leadership, and it's kind of why you're here. So, I mean, good luck. Anyway, thank you.
Are there any more comments, discussions for Mr. Wilford? Yes, I will agree with Ms. Miller that I think that the public education and kind of driving conversation and debates around these issues are very important, and ultimately politicians at every level, I think, are responsive to public pressures and input, and I think that ultimately in times of scarce resources and tight budgets and balancing priorities, I think that it really does. It's easy to say we will elect a leader, or we will elect a mayor, a premier, a president, or prime minister, but ultimately if there isn't the follow-up and that continued feedback and pressure and public input, that I think it's all for naught ultimately.
It's a cheeky comment, but those 26 concrete piers, if they built, it would save them money.
Thank you, Mr. Wilford. Okay, so we will move down to correspondence. We received a couple of items from Miss Lucy Renault, some information about plogging, which I had never heard of, but began in Sweden and is a combination of jogging and picking up litter and trash in the community. Did anyone have any comments on that particular? Was interesting. Read a little bit about the history, and of course, Mrs. Renault is a big plogger herself, so that made sense to inform the committee about that. Yes, Councillor Mickey, Vice Chair.
We already have a plogger. We had a young lady came either before council or one of the first meetings, and she travels up and down County Road 64 and Second Edgehill Road. She picks up bags of garbage. She sets them on site. I have picked them up.
That is her.
And Director Andrews told me that Public Works sees the garbage there. They pick them up as well. She fills the bag and sets it down and carries on. So we do have one, and it's a great idea. If anybody's out there, pick it up. But she's really energetic. Let me tell you, I've seen her carry 2 or 3 bags at a time. I don't think she weighs 80 pounds, but she's out there doing it. Yeah, so great.
And that is who, Ms. Renault, that is who sent us the correspondence. She did the presentation. Yeah, it's I didn't know that there was even a word for it, actually. I just called her the trash jogger, but now she is the plogger officially. But yes, Councillor. Go ahead, Councillor Sharp.
Oh, thank you. I just want to thank all bloggers because it is very important. And, I didn't know it had an official name either. And the more all of us plog, but I used to walk or jog. Now I'm more of a walker. So I was just wondering if we could have some wogging or whatever that name would be. But all of us working together, if we see garbage, walking, jogging, let's try to pick it up if we feel it's safe. So anyway, I think it's a wonderful program, and I thank her. But I'm more of a wogger.
I would have to agree with you, Ms. Miller.
Yeah, just a minor comment. I think it's circle again. I don't mean to keep reiterating on the issue of public awareness on this, but it'd be really good if there was a more presence of information like, yes, you can leave a bag of garbage on the side of the road and someone's going to pick it up, because the average citizen might not know that is kosher to do, and might find that that participation would improve if there was, just some little things like this. We get the words out on that, and it might help encourage this kind of activity.
Thank you. I think just officially, I think that's more of a unique situation with Mrs. Renault with her jogging and all of the trash that she actually picks up. Although I'm sure there's possibilities working with Director Angelo. If there are other large-scale ploggers, I'm sure we can facilitate a similar situation with them.
Yeah, just a question. I wonder if Lucy has made any presentations to local high schools about plogging. It just has a cool sound to it, and I can see young people latching onto it and saying, gee, let's get in on this, because they're often blamed for causing a lot of the litter around. I wonder if she's gone to any of the high schools or been invited to any of the high schools to present the idea. Get the kids wrapped up to, because they can get points, for example, for their volunteer hours, if they need a selfish reason to do it. But plogging, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Let's go do it, guys.
Yes, that's an interesting point. I wonder if there isn't opportunities potentially when we are coming up on the next trash bash or something, to reach out to the high schools and just make it be known. Of course, there's that opportunity to get volunteer hours, or possibly there's a way to create a regular program for them to utilize those hours by plogging or otherwise picking up trash and refuse in the community. That's something we could I could ask Mrs. Renault about. And
do we have any? Do we have any? So we have contact information for Lucy.
Absolutely, I can give you that information.
I'd be quite
absolutely.
pleased to just give her a call and say, look, have you, and she's probably already thought of that, but
Sure.
sometimes maybe she hadn't, so I'd be glad to do that.
Okay, Vice Chair McHugh.
Yeah, thank you. No, I think it's a great idea as well that schools get them involved. So I think maybe we could have a couple of plogging days a year or something where we could, but we'd have to coordinate this again with Public Works because the garbage they pick up would have to be deposited someplace. Wouldn't want it carrying it a great distance, but maybe she could talk to the high schools, flesh this out a little more, and come back and make another presentation to us. It was most pleasant listening to her the first time, so yes.
Absolutely. Okay, Mr. Brown.
I think she goes on to note about bringing in it's referred to the World Cleanup Day and the Trash Bash and the whole programs together. And I think there's a wonderful opportunity, and especially from a public education standpoint. And when you look at the potential, currently I believe there's 211 countries that participate in this. And from a Quinte West standpoint, it gives a broader opportunity to pick up trash, quite frankly. And I think it's a great opportunity.
Vice Chair McHugh.
Yeah, my only concern is, like I said, if we had it more days, we do a trash bash twice a year, and also it gets cleaned up the next day, it's dirty again. So if you had this idea of plogging, if you had a little more consistency, maybe the high school did it one day a month or something, it wouldn't appear to be as much, and it wouldn't be as much up to gather up on a trash day. But we seem to hold these things on 1 or 2 days. Everything looks clean, like I said, and 24 hours later, we're right back in the same boat. So I think it's a great idea if we get students involved, anybody involved that wants to be a jogger or a wogger.
Okay, well, yes, there was further correspondence about the World Cleanup Day, and I think it might be better to continue down to Councillor O'Neill's update on the fall trash bash, and that would help facilitate the conversation about Mrs. Renault's suggestions in terms of the possibly changing the date. So I will hand off to move down to Councillor McHugh's update, or sorry, Councillor O'Neill's update, and let him speak to the fall trash bash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to thank Quinte West staff for the time and effort they put in to trying to do this second event, and also the Kinsman Club for the barbecue. I think the barbecue's great, and the Kinsman Club has offered to do it for any events. Participation was nowhere near what I had hoped for. Pretty disappointed. I know it's new, but I don't want to waste city time either. I'd like to see it again, but I like Lucy's idea of coordinating with something else, because I think it is potential, but I don't want to have low participation. I want it higher, and any ideas we can have to make it better, I want.
Okay, thank you. Does any other committee members want to discuss her suggestion? I think just from my point of view, I think that it does make sense in terms of the information to kind of, if we're able to correspond with other events around the globe, I think that that's kind of a no-brainer in that sense. Does anyone else feel the same way? Yeah, seem reasonable. Mr. Brown?
I want to thank Councillor O'Neill for the work that he put in, because it does take work, and again, Public Works, and I participated, and it was quite a learning experience. I did a mile on Telephone Road, and it really goes to show the impact. 5 bags of garbage within an hour, but it's almost bigger than picking up the garbage. It's the interaction with the Public Works, and everybody that participated, the Kinsmen, and it shows participation was low, and I recognize that, but the effort and the intent to build on, I think the foundation, and I want to thank you for that.
Yes, I will also thank Councillor O'Neill. It was figuratively and literally his baby from creation to implementation. It absolutely wouldn't have happened without his work and support. So it sounds like the consensus is that if we're able to work on opportunities to boost the participation for next year, and does it make sense to have a motion if you support it as well, Councillor O'Neill? Should we do a motion to suggest to staff that we move the day to correspond, or do we need a motion for that, or do we think? Or maybe we just, I mean, we could later as well, I guess, when we get into the spring and we're actually planning the dates, or we could do it now.
It's not necessary to have a motion for it because the dates are fluid and they are planned by the city. It's just when the next dates are being planned, we should check and make sure that we're coinciding with days that are nationally recognized.
So we could talk to Director Angelo of maybe the suggested dates that we may like. And I found it was later in the fall, there were leaves falling, and I think if it was a little earlier in the year, that might have helped too.
I agree. Mrs. Renault had a few suggestions that make sense. The leaves. I think the earlier in September you get a bit out of the flu and cold and virus season. Also, that probably helps. And yeah, a few other things. So yeah, I'm absolutely in support of that. I think it makes sense. And would you like to speak, Mr. Henning?
This is more of a question than first off. Hats off to everybody involved with both trash bashes. I wasn't able to participate in this particular one because I was away. The one before I was, and my wife and I spent actually 3 nights cleaning up a corner of our world here beforehand. But I'm wondering if there's a way we can raise a bit of a hoopla before the thing starts, because I had to kick myself to remember that it was coming up, and I said, oh, geez, I can't go this year. But hats off to everyone that participated and put all the work into it. But can we get a bit of a buzz going beforehand to get people keyed up about it? And I'm wondering if any of this could mesh with this idea we were talking about earlier about clogging. What did you call it? There we go. Anyway, that word. And okay, so the next trash bash is going to be a cool event because we're all going to go out and clog. Get a little bit of like advertisers are great at doing this, getting people all excited about something coming up that we're going to do, and I wonder if we must have the resources if not from our city staff within our community that could go out there and get people excited about going and doing this, you know, instead of just there'll be an extra trash bash.
Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did check with city staff, and they put it on their website, they put it in the newspaper, they put it in announcements. I feel they did quite a bit. It's just there were so many events that time of year too that it took away from everything else. But I think the city did quite a bit trying to get the word out.
Oh, absolutely. There was no criticism intended there. I'm just wondering though if we can find some key to, because it's hard to get people's attention these days. You almost have to, say, make them slip on a banana peel to make them realize there's trash under their feet, if you know what I'm saying. So I'm just wondering if there's any way we can add to all the good work it did this year to get people excited about it. As I say, it was more of a question than a statement.
You want any more?
Can I bring up something totally different? Is that okay?
Absolutely, go ahead.
The last conference I was at, the larger municipalities have hired people that their only job is to do consultation on the environmental impact of the decisions that are about to be made or proposed to be made. And I think that's great that the bigger municipalities are doing that. I don't know if we could do that here, but at least the bigger municipalities are making a real effort to do that.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think that would speak to Mr. Wilford some of his input about some of the other municipalities, and an important part, even if we don't have a specific staff member, I think that council and staff just thinking through issues and their environmental impact, and I think that that's even probably a move in the right direction from previous generations. Okay, so I guess we've given some kind of soft input and direction there, and I think there's always going to be possibilities to further market these events, and I'm sure that the comms staff will look at new possibilities to get the word out for next year, and we'll all work together to try to make it. It makes sense. A lot of things take a couple of years to get popular, but I think it's a wonderful event, great opportunity. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to ask Councillor O'Neill, are you suggesting we hire staff or just integrate it with the program that we were trying to achieve?
No, I'm not
Well, I
suggesting
just
we
wanna
hire.
understand
I'm
what
not
you were
suggesting
saying
any
there.
more staff. I'm just saying that the bigger municipalities are considering climate change in the future. Not that we can do it. I'm just saying that it's a positive that it's moving in that way.
Okay, thank you.
And I think also to the point that some of the, and I'm also going to, as Councillor Sharp asked about, look into some of the scoring there, because it would be interesting to see. Obviously, we don't have quite as much resources as some of the larger ones, so the scores may not be necessarily reflective of that. But I'm going to look into that a bit more as well. I will move on to new and other business, which, oh, sorry.
Pardon me, Chair. Could we get a mover and seconder to support the receiving the correspondence, please?
Absolutely. Vice Chair McHugh, and seconded by Mr. Brown. Okay. All in favor? Okay, that is carried. Okay, so I will move on to the new and other business, and I will let Ms. Miller go first, and I believe that she has some specific presentation on the great backyard bird count, and then I will go around the horseshoe for individual business for the members.
See how which pointer goes forward. There are 4 slides. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Oops. Okay, good. So hello, I'm Jacqueline, as you all know, and I originally made this proposal as representing a member of the general public to bring it to the forum of the advisory committee, and it touches upon the idea of how and what tools can we have, what exercises can we have that can increase general knowledge of biodiversity, but not only just knowledge of biodiversity, but get people to be invigorated and want to learn more and participate. And in my experience in my career, a lot of it has to do with the general public feeling they don't have qualification, they don't have experience, and they don't have authority. And they also have intimidation that they don't have technology or are afraid of the routes to go by engaging in some things. They're involved in citizen science. So I'm introducing something that I think would be a great activity as a starting point, as a platform. It's not necessarily just this in and of itself, but it's an example, and it's something that I'm very involved with on my own. I participate in Feeder Watch. I have been a participating member of Birds Canada, and I've communicated on other levels in other capacities during my career with engaging in these kind of things. So this is the Great Backyard Bird Count, and it is one of the programs that Cornell Lab of Ornithology, Audubon, and Birds Canada organize that help the public engage in contributing to a database that actually does have impact and help direct decisions going forward about what we do with declining biodiversity. First slide I got up there is this is a pivotal paper. I'm not sure if many of you know of it. It was in Science in 2019. It's since been updated. And this actually, the reason I bring this is a lot of the data that programs like the Great Backyard Bird Count and Feeder Watch Canada helped or contributed to this database, whereby they found that since 1970, we have had in North America a 70% loss in avian biomass, most affecting songbirds. I mean, there are positive stories as well as negative stories, but it's hugely impactful, and it's not just a climate issue. A lot of it has to do with decisions we make with how we design development going forward and what we do in terms of land management. So since 1970, the data has shown that we have lost, probably now a great many more than this, close to 3 billion birds. Now, to put that in perspective, this isn't always just like your exotic birds. Like here, this is just a little diagram that shows you in terms of the families, how many of the total are lost. So in bobolinks, anyone familiar with bobolinks? I actually had some in I've got like half an acre of grass on my property. And 2 years ago, I had spotted my first nesting family of bobolinks on my home property. Very exciting, but they've gone down by about 2/3. And what's even more interesting, and the general public can gravitate to and understand, is it's very common things are being impacted as well. I don't think a lot of people realize that we've lost 1 in 4 rose-breasted grosbeaks, even blue jays, 1 in 4, 25% of blue jay biomass, numbers of blue jays, not just the issue of the species itself. So really an important and critical issue to be getting people to be thinking about. But rather than just thinking about the gloom and doom, we have these kind of programs which also engage people in very healthy activities. The Great Backyard Bird Count essentially is an exercise to go out casually as a family, as an individual, and spot things and write in about them. Give a tally. Now, the official program is web-based. It's under the rubric of eBird, and quite frankly, as a scientist in my career, I found it not undaunting to navigate. And that actually, I think, is what puts a lot of people off, particularly in rural communities, when they think they don't know how and they don't have the capacity to get involved. So my idea, and I've spoken with Birds Canada, and they are actually very excited about it, is to do a group activity that could be centrally coordinated, centrally assisted, where people, all they really have to do is just get out there and look at stuff and count. Birds Canada provides ID materials. They do provide ideas about support. Really all it needs is someone forced to centralize and say, yeah, you can send your counts to us, we'll log them in, and anyone that's interested in how to do this more formally, we could have some information sessions at public library or whatever, and help people learn how they can do this on their own. And my hope would be that gradually, over time, people will realize the kind of information that is generated from this, the impact it can have, and then by learning how to use some of these platforms, they can get information that they may be very curious about, works well in classrooms, works well in community groups, things like migration patterns. Quinte West is part of a major migration corridor going through Prince Edward County, North Ontario, and back down into the United States and countries further south. And at different points in the year, you do see you see the effects of this coming through. You don't always see the same birds in your feeder watch one month as you do the next. And that's why it's so important to get people engaged in monitoring. It's a lot of fun. Kids love it. They learn the scientific names and they get really just invigorated, and they get interested in science. They get interested in contributing to science and realizing as a citizen we can make a difference. So that's kind of my pitch here. It really, it's an established program. It's a continental program, Canada, United States. It's actually a global program when they can get countries to participate as a partner, in which they guide through, how you go about making your IDs, depositing your information, and so forth. So we could begin, that you could begin as this sort of day. It's already designated. It's in February. The Great Backyard Bird Count is to help them get data about what sticks around, how much of it is, and how common it is. And as I said, in Quinte West, just going down by the marina, you can see, depending on the time of year, some endangered, some incredibly beautiful species, very musical species, but also some incredibly endangered species too. I don't know how many people realize that, for instance, the chimney swift is on our critical watch. And you go downtown Trenton, we are blessed in our city. You hear that teet, 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 flying overhead. Those are chimney swifts. We have an old city with old structure. We have an endangered species that calls our city home. And it would be great if we can get initiatives like this together and we can find out, okay, where are those birds finding their home? And that can blossom into other things. Right now, my interest is, something that is painless for the public, something that gets them engaged, something that increases excitement, where they're initially provided with all the supports, and then eventually, you see very little response perhaps the first year, but as time goes by and you realize it's just like a one-day activity, you don't have to commit a lot of time, then the next year maybe there's some people that want to learn how to do that on their own, how to get involved in the interactive platforms where they can input their own data and follow their own data and make more of a concrete commitment and become a citizen scientist and learn, voila, it's not that hard. So that's, I think that's pretty much about it. So the idea is raising conservation awareness, encouraging engagement, stimulating curiosity, and providing a springboard so that people can get involved. Because I find a lot of times activities, it's learning about the fact that they're happening, how to get information about them, and that it's not, and a way to get involved that's not intimidating, that anybody with any background can do. And backyard bird watch, backyard is a misnomer. You could do it anywhere. You could be sitting on a patio at a bar and just watching what happens to come out to the patio looking for crumbs. That counts too. Sitting out at the marina, that counts too. It all counts. And it's just a really great initiative, and it takes actually very little time and very little effort. So with that, I thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for the excellent presentation. I will hand it over to Vice Chair McHugh.
Thank you, Jacqueline. I enjoyed that. My wife has been a lifelong birder. We have a library full of books. She's got her journals, and she writes in every time she sees them and that. Unfortunately, she married a dodo. I know nothing about birds. I'm lucky to tell a blue jay from a robin. However, I was blown away this summer when our family got together and two of our daughters were sitting there. And one said, "Do you realize you hear that?" I said, "What?" She told me the bird was. How do you know? She has an app on her phone. The other daughter says, "I have one as well." It hears the birds while you're sitting there, tells you what the bird is, will play that back to you. Could we get this technology maybe involved somehow where these people that have these apps, when they're listening to them, maybe they can send it to a central location, and if they happen to be walking by the marina and conveniently put their app on for 10 minutes to hear it, but I didn't hear these birds, but they were there in our trees, and I'm not looking for them. I didn't know if that's what you're looking for, to identify the birds, or just go out and count. There's 15 birds in the... But no, maybe there's some way to get that in, and for someone like, I don't have it on my phone, but if I was sitting around doing it, might be interested just to see what visitors I do have keeping me company in an afternoon on the decks.
That is really excellent feedback. And yes, like I said, this program is more formalized. It already is a web-based program. They have apps, Merlin, they have ID apps, iBird, iNaturalist, that sort of thing. But a lot of people don't know how to use them. So the idea I had was, well, if you kind of started out by being the go person and giving them the information on how to ID, and you can help them learn how to vet, learn how to ID, and learn how to use these apps. That's the critical thing, is then, having some public sessions, going in the library or whatever, having one monthly off to say, this is how this is Merlin, this is how it works, and this is where you can get. A lot of these apps are free. The one you're talking about, I have on my cell phone too. It's by Cornell University, their lab, and it is free. And you can just turn it on, make your recordings, and you can't fool it. It'll tell you when you're a human trying to masquerade as a bird too. I've tried to do that as well. And not only that, but it's got ways that things that you can do with that. You can download birds from any kind of district into that database. It's a cloud database, so it doesn't clog up your phone per se. And so you can go traveling and find out what those birds are as well. And you can go in and find information about that bird. You found this call, doesn't know what it is. It'll give you, your wild card guess, and you can hit another spot on the app, and it'll tell you about the history and the natural history and ecology of that species. And you also have the opportunity with the same map, you can contribute these observations that you're randomly making based on bioacoustics. My background was bioacoustics, so these kind of apps really excite me because we do the same thing with bats, which is not another year, I promise. But there's similar programs going on with bat identification and so forth. So yes, you can, and yes, you can show people how to get them. They're absolutely free. They work on any Android, Apple platform. They even work on a BlackBerry. I got a BlackBerry, so they work on those. So yes, that could be all part of an information session or ongoing engagement. I'm willing to put in time. I'm willing to put in the effort. I'm willing to reach out to other organizations that have expertise that I know of. What I need is to know that I have some support and perhaps an endorsement to be able to do this on behalf of Quinte West as a group activity, or to go forward and try to disseminate that idea.
Supplemental, Vice Chair McKee.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to reach out to the city and see if we can't give you time at the library for a presentation. I have a daughter that's involved with the community gardens that we have, and she comes and puts on things and shows people how to plant things, harvest things, and what to do. If you're willing, to reinvent the wheel, you have all the knowledge. If we could advertise, have an afternoon, people would come, bring their phones with them, find out where the app is, download it, and get a database of people to start feeding information back. To me, it sounds too easy, but yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Sorry, I got somebody off here.
Yes, I'm just going to go to Councillor O'Neill, and then I'll go to Councillor Sharp.
Thank you
Mr.
very
Chair,
much.
if I could, I can't see anyone. The PowerPoint is still up, so I can't see anything.
Oh, I can't take it down, I don't think.
Okay, we'll address that.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for your presentation. I'm very surprised about the declining numbers. Is there any actions members of the public can take to help increase the numbers of the
Absolutely,
population?
and I can circulate. This was by permission. I was given the larger presentation that they usually make or provide to be available to the public for the Great Backyard Bird Count, and it has a slide in it. It's much larger than this, of course. I just plucked out slides that I thought were good, and it's got the script that goes with it, and one of the last slides are the things that the average person can do and that communities can do to help mitigate some of these problems. And unfortunately, yes, climate change is a big problem going forward, and it will have an impact in terms of adaptation, but the biggest problem right now is area loss. And across the board, every scientific body has recognized that area loss being deforestation, loss of wetlands, area loss being the way development occurs, lack of corridors, that sort of thing. Again, knowing where stuff, going back to environmental impact surveys and so forth, knowing where stuff is helps mitigate the problem. Because until you know where there's a fly-through corridor, Prince Edward County, that's exactly the kind of thing they recognized when they made their monarch sanctuary. You know, this is an important stopover. And yes, this is all doable. It's all easy. It's accessible science. And yes, there are things that even the average person can do, which will eventually, can be outspoken about some of these things, will come up at other meetings, because there are suggestions with things, everything like even looking at the date that you rake your leaves. Right, so.
Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Councillor McHugh that absolutely we should hopefully work with yourself to go to our library board, because I think that's a wonderful partnership. And I also want to encourage, if you haven't, if we could help advocate this, to go to Lord Trent Conservation and Quinte Conservation. I think this is a wonderful program, and we have great partnership with both of those organizations. And I just want to support Councillor McHugh's comments, and I think this is a wonderful program. My dad was a big bird lover, and anyone can do it, any place, as you said, 15-minute, this is a great program at no
Yeah.
cost. Thank you.
I totally agree with you, and I have those things in my mind and on my radar, but I don't want to go ahead and reach out and communicate with other organizations without the, the approval and the foreknowledge of council and going forward, which is why I presented today.
I think Mr. Henning might be next in order, and then I'll go to Mr.
Yeah, just
Brennan.
one question. You mentioned the library. There was a presentation that sounded very much like that at the library, I believe only a couple of weeks ago, that my wife attended, and it sounded very much along the same lines of what you're saying tonight. So I have a feeling that if you do go there and speak with them, you'll be welcomed with open arms. That's just my guess. But certainly I would go there because it sounded very similar. In fact, when I went over these minutes before I came down, and Patsy said, yeah, well, they were, I'm sure they were at the library. And I said, I don't think so. So anyway, I would speak to the library people and see just what, as part of, because I think it was part of the public education, and apparently there was a wide cross-section of people there from young to old, and everybody was really switched on about it all. So I think you'd find a welcoming audience there if you even mention it to them. They'll say, oh yeah, such and such a person is in all, and maybe you'd like to contact them, Yeah. So my other question is there any kind of, like, say for example, I didn't have a computer right now, and didn't feel I could report this stuff myself. Is there someone I can contact?
Well, this is exactly why I thought of establishing this as a community group activity to begin with, and then helping foster the knowledge and the comfort of doing this independently on your own. I would see, like, subsequent years, there would be overlap, people deciding, oh, I can do this on my own, I'm really interested, I'm keen, I've got the stuff, and I don't need you. And other people that will still need someone to say, I think I've got these ideas. Can I send you a picture, or can I describe what I saw? And they would have someone, and I would take that responsibility to take that on. I do have a lot of eager old student colleagues that would be willing to help.
So if someone, for example, came to me and said, look, I heard about her presentation and I'd like to get involved, would we have them contact you, or?
I mean, it's a project in formation. My first step was to present it and see if there was any traction, and then to see how it germinates. And definitely that's something that could be, that was my idea, was to develop, to make it, a central place that people could go to and feel comfortable that they could just dump their information, and then eventually evolve into more community participation, and serendipitously teach the community and people in the community that they are indeed citizen scientists, and they don't even know it when they participate in something like this. And in terms of what can we do, we are already doing a great deal of things. Some of the success stories that are in that paper and in subsequent papers are the success stories about the increase in numbers and biomass for our raptors, for waterfowl. There's a couple other larger groups that have made tremendous recovery, and a lot of that has to do with the benchwork done by organizations like Ducks Unlimited and hunter and angler associations, and their advocacy of protection of wetlands for other reasons that they want to see them protected, but in the end it's the same outcome. And it really has had tangible effects. So I think we can, and everyone involved in this research feels we can still turn the pendulums around. So
in our lifetimes. So.
Mr. Brown?
Great presentation, thank you. I think that in further to what Mr. Henning was saying, the collaboration with the library makes so much sense too, with the computer systems and things that that resource may be there. But I wanted to ask whether we need a motion to be able to endorse this so that we take next steps.
That's completely up to the chair.
I think that we should move a motion in support of Ms. Miller reaching out to the library on behalf with the committee's blessing to see if there's some programmatic opportunities, and I would also, I suppose, give her blessing if the rest of the committee supports to maybe reach out to Lower Trent Conservation, possibly too, in communication with Director Angelo too, of course, to see if there's a larger programmatic with some of those organizations or all of them, or yeah. So is there a mover? Okay, Councillor Vice Chair McHugh second. All in favor? Okay, that'll be carried. All right. I guess we are done then with that. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Miller. Great presentation. Okay, so I think a few folks have some new business, so I will start. Got even a little bit myself here, so I will start with Mr. Henning, or I can start at the other end if you prefer. But okay. All right, go ahead.
Okay, I didn't prepare a presentation to bring here tonight, but as it turns out, I think we all are pretty much of one mind because my thinking on a couple of points dovetails very much with everything that's been said here tonight, with a few little supporting remarks. One thing is, it was mentioned during the presentation on climate change that transportation, and I've been hearing a fair bit about transportation lately, and things I've been hearing is we have a number, and this is community-wide kind of thing, but in my own small area, it's an aging population for the most part. I'm the young guy on the street almost. Or was for a while now. We are getting some new families moving in, but I'm hearing a lot of, well, gee, we want to stay here living on the west end of Trenton, but we're not sure how much longer we're going to be able to drive to the grocery store, to our appointments downtown at Life Labs and those things. We really wish we could just walk close by and grab a bus downtown. I don't know how pervasive that is, but I do hear it. And so kind of dovetailing with that, I hear people saying, well, I drive downtown and I can't get parked because people are either driving to work or leaving the cars there for a long period of time. And this whole idea of bringing our cars downtown, I brought mine tonight because it was raining. Otherwise, I could have walked, or I actually intended to find a bus stop. I could get on a bus and come down. And I did look into it earlier in the weekends. It turned out I would have to walk to the high school or in that area or to Walmart to catch a bus to come to City Hall. And that seemed kind of counterproductive. I'd be halfway here in one case and halfway the other way in another case. So two things. I'm wondering if there's a way that we could somehow promote our already much improved public transit, which has been much improved the last recent years, and we've extended it out to communities like Battawa and Frankfurt and so on. And we've even linked up, I think we link up now at Lola's College with Belleville Transportation. Is that not true? So I'm wondering if there's ways that we can, especially in light of climate change and the need to stop driving our cars so much, and also the need of an aging population to travel without using cars to their appointments and to so on. Is there some way that we could evaluate what we have now, encourage the public to use public transit because it exists on ridership, and generally raise public awareness of, hey, there is public transit there available for you to take. You don't have to worry about driving downtown or you know, having an accident if you're feeling a little bit unsure behind the wheel these days because you're getting older, and at the same time encouraging even young people, instead of taking your car downtown to work, how about taking the bus downtown? So first off, public awareness. Could we do a survey of ridership and you know, asking people, well, would you consider taking the bus if there was one within some decent short walking distance from your home? That sort of whole look at it. So, and I don't know, I'd like to go somewhere and get the information, for example, about ridership. You know, how many people ride the bus? How many people would ride the bus if they could get conveniently to it, and so on. So would a survey be possible? Would a public information program be possible to encourage people to use transit? And the other somewhat disparate point I was going to bring along is another thing that people in the public have talked to me about as soon as they heard I was on the environmental committee, was a problem of plastics. And of course, we're all aware of plastics and their deleterious effect on the environment and on animals and on birds and fish and all species, including humans. But as I go around, I see things like balloons from balloon releases, helium balloons here and there, all over. I see things like on one of the trash bashes, there was an area where we picked up something like 100 of those little twist ties, you know, those plastic cable ties that go on things, and it was quite close to our Bay of Quinte here. One could see quite easily how a seagull would mistake that for a grub, pick it up, get halfway out over the water and say, man, this isn't food, and drop it. And I'm convinced that's happening because First Nations person actually came to me a couple of months ago and said, look, you know, they're finding, I'm getting complaints from our people complaining that they're finding plastic inside animals that they've hunted for food or fish they've caught. And they're quite concerned about it. So I'm just wondering, are there ways, would it be possible, for example, to consider things like hot air balloons, or rather helium balloons? Would it be too much to ask to think about discouraging or even legislating against their release off of city property, at least? People have parties in the park, birthday parties, and you'll see people with these great balloons. And I don't think anyone actually releases them anymore, but there's so many things we think we do without even thinking about it. They bring them there, and do they all go home with them? Probably not. Are some accidentally released? Probably. So basically, my plan for, this is maybe a lead on this, but is there any appetite here for doing something like surveying on public use of public transit and people's attitudes and perhaps some kind of public education to get people using it more?
Thank you, Mr. Henning. I can speak, I'll go to Councillor Sharp in a moment. I know that the comms department definitely does promote Quinte Transit a fair bit, and I know there's Jacqueline, Director Grimman isn't here today, but I'm sure we can follow up to see what data that she currently has available that has been collected, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of ridership information that's currently available that she can avail the committee to, and that there's other possibilities too. We can look at trying to communicate to the public availabilities and try to promote that. I'm sure. But I'll go to Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to add to what you've already clarified. We have a transit board. We have council representation on that committee. And we can certainly, through you, pass that on to our council representatives, which are, I know Councilor Stedall sits on that. They do a lot of ridership surveys. They promote extensively transit, because I agree that that is what we want to do. But we can share with that committee, but we are not that, we have a committee that deals with transit. So I don't want to overlap. That's, I just want to make that point. We have, they have a large portfolio, but we can certainly share the concerns of this committee. And certainly through you, Mr. Chair, but I know they study a lot and they promote a lot, and we all want to advocate for transportation. With regard to the twist ties and the balloons, I certainly agree. I mean, throwing balloons and poor animals and birds eating these balloons, I don't know what we can do. Maybe, you know, you could research that, and I don't know if there's other bylaws, but, yeah, you know, putting up balloons, and no, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's very reasonable that we could follow up with staff, Director Angelo, Director Grimmin, and find out possibly. I don't know if there's anything on the books bylaw wise, or if the city has a preference for non-helium balloons versus regular ones, or those sorts of things. But staff would definitely have those answers, and if the committee wants to take an action or recommendation on you know what the staff should be using at these events in the future, if it's not something that we agree with, we're certainly free to do that. But we can gather some more information and see kind of what's currently being used, and figure out on the. Go ahead.
And my reason in mentioning those as opposed to coming with some kind of proposal was, to be frank, I don't know enough about the transit organization within the city. And I do know that it's expanded and done an extremely good job of expanding in recent years. What I was trying to reflect as a member of the public was, I'm hearing from people that, gee, we'd kind of like to have more in this area here, or closer bus stops and those kinds of things. So essentially I was trying to broach the idea tonight without appearing to be someone that thinks he knows a lot more than he does, but also to basically ask, I'd be quite willing to take that particular one on, and as long as I could approach people from the transit committee, you know, to ask for data like ridership, and that kind of thing. I'd be quite willing to come back to the committee then next time around with some recommendations.
Sure, we can absolutely follow up with staff and see what exists on the data for that. But I think that it probably would end up being a larger kind of maybe communication sort of discussion about environmental stewardship in general versus specific. Recommendations toward the transit services themselves, just because the committee and board handles that. But I'll go down. Does Mr. Brown, would you like, you have any?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to touch on a topic, especially in light of the pressures that staff and council are facing from a financial standpoint. And one of the things that I've been watching is, in trying to get as much data off the web, is on waste diversion rates. And the reason being is that I see landfill rates increasing. I see recycling changing to the extended producer responsibilities. And one of the things that I think that's coming down the tubes, without a doubt, even if you look on today's Waste to Resource Ontario calculator, there's about 3,694 days before every landfill in Ontario there will be no more opportunity to put material in. And so it comes down to the data that I saw on the web was that the last audit data from 2019 said there was about 2.2 million tons of material going to landfill in Quinte West. And what I was trying to determine, or trying to at least think if there's updated data, because from a service standpoint, maybe there's improvements that can be made from an organic standpoint, because I think that in fairness to the Public Works and Environmental Services, they've done quite a good job, quite frankly, on the services that we do have available. But I think it's how effective are we using them? And I think that the only way that we can determine that is with data. And so as a consequence, I was wondering if there is updated data.
Would Mr. Tracy be able to speak to that about waste diversion data?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, I cannot provide input on that.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. I can absolutely have Mr. Brown follow up with Director Angelo about getting that data to you, whatever is available in that regard. And I will briefly mention too that I believe at the next meeting, whenever that is, or possibly the one after that, but there will can be a brief update given about the recycling administrative changeover that's coming down the pipe, so he can speak to that at a future meeting.
Thank you.
Ms. Miller, did you have any new business?
I think I'm still so focused on this. I will in the future, but right now,
Okay.
they will probably come from next, and we'll have to do with the waste pickup days, the yard waste pickup days, but I think there'd be another opportunity to comment.
All right, sounds good. Sorry, I inadvertently skipped you there and I went to Mr. Brown, but Councillor O'Neill?
I'm good for tonight, thanks.
Okay, Vice Chair McHugh.
Thank you. As councillors and members of this committee, we're all supposed to have come up with ideas and promote things, and people expect action and things from us, but it always blows me away. I'm always amazed when we have local citizens who are willing to step up, not only present a program, but run with the program or plod with the program in the case of Lucy Bernard here. And I want to thank Jacqueline Miller as well, a member here. She stepped up. Again, both these people come up with an idea for an excellent program, and they're willing to spearhead it, run with it, so they don't only talk the talk, they walk the walk. So that's what makes Quinte West the great place that it is. People coming up with great ideas, no matter how big or how small, they all add up in the long run. So I thank both these ladies and everybody else who made presentations tonight, and my hat off also to Councillor Neal for trying to get a second trash bash and to keep the place clean. So hopefully we can combine all these things, and it's all for our benefit as well. We all live in this community, so keep pulling together, and great things. Thank you. And I'd be remiss, I don't have another meeting, if I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year if I don't see you all beforehand, and thank you to staff, the same there as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I will go to Councillor Sharp before I finish.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too want to wish everyone happy holidays, and I want to thank Councillor O'Neill for coordinating that trash bash, and also the barbecue and all the work he did with all the community groups and individuals. And I have to agree with Councillor McHugh again that we need to, what is it, walk the talk, we'll plug the talk, or plug the walk. And to the committee members and those that presented today, thank you very much. We will all work together for the future. Thank you.
All right, so
One little question, if I could.
sure, Vice Chair McHugh.
Maybe the clerk can answer this for us. Lucy, who's picking up the garbage, do we supply her with the bags that she deposits on the side of the road? Does anybody know?
I can't answer that, sir. I believe she's got an understanding with Public Works, but I'm not aware of what it is.
Okay, I'll follow up with Chris then. Thank you.
All right, so we've got a couple of things that we'll possibly bring forward to the next meeting in more detail, but it emerged a little bit too late to get on the agenda formally this time. But at the Planning Advisory Committee that Councillor McHugh and Councillor O'Neill both sit on with myself, there has been a few mentions this term already about tree canopy and tree planting in the new developments, new residential developments, subdivisions, that sort of thing. And that's an issue that I would like to explore a little bit more with the committee in the future, next year, I guess we're into now. There's a report from planning department that I've read over that's I think will be very good background information for everyone, and I will circulate that certainly in time for the next meeting, and continue conversations with Director Angelo and Jardin about potentially looking at some policy options there. And recently, there was federal court struck down the single-use plastic ban, and I did ask the clerk to just investigate the possibility of addressing the issue municipally in the future. So possibly have an update on that. We don't need to get into a debater necessarily on it today, as it may be a moot point after all. But yes, that was struck down by a federal court. So I think that is about it. I will also wish everyone a Merry Christmas and invite everyone out to the Frankfurt on Saturday, and on Sunday the Trenton Santa Claus parades. For anyone watching at home who wants some fun activities, very family-friendly fun activities, Frankfurt Saturday and Trenton on Sunday. All the times and details are available online, and I guess I just need 2 for adjournment. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Moved by Mr. Brown and Vice Chair McHugh. All in favor? All right. We are adjourned.
Good evening, everyone. Bye.